Imagine a man so free, so unbound, he lived in a barrel, pleasured himself in the marketplace, and told Alexander the Great to get out of his sunlight. Diogenes of Sinope wasn't just a philosopher. He was a predator of illusions, wielding truth like a blade to cut through the lies of civilization. His greatest target: the myth of romantic love. Over the next 17 minutes, I'll show you why every man who's ever loved a woman has been deceived by the greatest lie ever told. By the end, you'll walk away either broken or liberated. 2,400 years ago, Diogenes proved it when he relieved himself in public and said, "If only hunger could be satisfied so easily." With his brutal insight, I'll reveal why men chase shadows of a feeling that was never real to begin with. Most men never recover from their first heartbreak. They spend years, decades pursuing a ghost of a sensation that was an illusion from the start. But Diogenes, he never chased, he never begged, he never knelt at the altar of a woman's affection, and because of that, he was the freest man who ever lived. Let me tell you a story you've never heard. In ancient Athens, there was a beautiful courtesan named Lysandra, the obsession of every wealthy man in the city. Kings, generals, poets, they all knelt at her feet, offering fortunes for a single night in her bed. One day, a young, arrogant philosopher approached Diogenes, boasting, "Lysandra looks at me with favor. She smiles when I speak." Diogenes, not looking up from his meal of raw onions, replied, "You fool. That smile is worth 300 plays." The young man stormed off, furious. A week later, he returned, shattered. Lysandra had taken his purse and moved on to a richer man. Diogenes laughed. "The only difference between you and a beggar is that a beggar knows he's being robbed. Here's the first lesson: women don't love the way men do. Modern men are taught that love is a fair trade. Give loyalty, get loyalty. Give devotion, get devotion. But history tells a different story. Take Heinrich von Kleist, a 19th century poet who worshipped a woman named Henriette Vogel. He wrote her letters, gave her his life, and when she lay dying of cancer, she asked him to kill her. He did. Then he turned the gun on himself. Her final words: "Thank you." No tears, no regrets, just gratitude for his service. This is the female psyche in its rawest form, a machine wired to seek the best possible outcome even at the cost of a man's life. Diogenes knew this. When asked why he refused marriage, he said, "Marriage is a trap for fools. Why chain yourself to a creature always seeking a better bond? Every man remembers his first betrayal. Maybe it was the high school girl who kissed you behind the bleachers, then laughed when her friends found out. Maybe it was the fiancé who swore forever only to leave when a wealthier man appeared. The details don't matter. The wound does. Here's the truth. No one dares tell you your pain isn't an accident, it's by design. In ancient Sparta, boys were torn from their mothers at 9 and thrown into the wilderness to survive. The weak died. The strong returned as warriors. Why? Because the Spartans knew pain is the only teacher worth having. Your suffering isn't a tragedy. It's your first and only true lesson about the nature of women. Diogenes said it best: a man crying for a woman is like a dog howling at the moon. The moon doesn't hear, the moon doesn't care. But what if your pain could be forged into strength? The same force that crushed you can be wielded as a weapon. This is where the weak walk away and the strong begin. Every man faces a moment when the veil is torn away. It hits suddenly, a brutal truth, shattering the illusions he's clung to since childhood. For some, it's the cold silence of an empty bed after she leaves. For others, it's the smirk of a woman who knows she holds all the power. But the lesson is always the same. Love isn't a contract, it's a game, and you've been playing blindfolded. Diogenes understood this better than any philosopher before or since. While Plato spun fantasies about ideal forms and Socrates debated morality, Diogenes lived in a barrel, pleasured himself in public, and laughed at men who still believed in fairness. He wasn't cruel or bitter, just awake, and that made him dangerous. History remembers those who turned suffering into strength. Take the Roman general Gaius Marius. Betrayed by his own people, exiled and left for dead, he clawed his way back to power on sheer fury. Or Nietzsche, rejected by Lou Salome, who dove into solitude and emerged with Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a book that redefined philosophy. These men didn't crumble under pain, they forged it into weapons. Diogenes' entire life was proof of this. When pirates captured and sold him into slavery, he didn't weep or beg. He looked at his buyer and said, "You need a master. I'll take the job." The man, stunned by Diogenes' audacity, made him tutor his sons. This is the first law of emotional alchemy. Your pain is currency. Spend it wisely. Most men squander it. They wallow in self-pity, replaying memories of her touch, her laugh, the way she looked at them before she left. They obsess over unanswerable questions. Why wasn't I enough? What did he have that I didn't? Diogenes would laugh. When a heartbroken young man asked him how to forget a woman, Diogenes handed him a rotting fish and said, "Carry this to the market." Confused, the man obeyed. When he returned, the stench was unbearable. "Now throw it away," Diogenes ordered. The man did. "Do you miss it?" Diogenes asked. "Of course not," the man replied. Diogenes smiled. "Then why do you miss her? Women have known this truth for centuries. They are the original strategists, architects of emotional warfare. While men built empires, women mastered influence not through force, but through illusion. Consider Catherine the Great, who seduced and deposed her husband to claim Russia's throne. Or Cleopatra, who wrapped Julius Caesar and Mark Antony around her finger, not just with beauty, but with calculated displays of vulnerability and power. These women weren't evil, they were simply playing the game at its highest level. Diogenes saw through the ruse. When a famous courtesan boasted she could make any man love her, he challenged her, "Then make me." She tried flattering him, touching him, whispering promises in his ear. Diogenes yawned. Finally, she stripped naked before him. He didn't even glance up from his bowl of lentils. "Your body is your weapon," he told her, "but I'm not your target. This is the second law: you can't be manipulated if you refuse to play. Modern men drown in manipulation. They're told to be open, vulnerable, to share their feelings, and when they do, they're punished. The woman loses respect. Desire fades, the relationship crumbles. Diogenes saw this coming. When a man tearfully confessed his wife no longer desired him after he poured out his heart, Diogenes handed him a cup of water and said, "Now spill it." The man did. "Can you put it back?" Diogenes asked. The man shook his head. "Then why did you spill it in the first place? The final stage isn't controlling women, it's controlling yourself. The Stoics called it apatheia, freedom from passion. Buddhists call it detachment. Diogenes called it living like a dog, unbound, without expectations, fearless of loss. When Alexander the Great, the most powerful man alive, stood before Diogenes and asked what he could do for him, Diogenes replied, "Get out of my sunlight. That's the mind of an unbreakable man, not one who has everything, but one who needs nothing." Most men never reach this. They spend their lives chasing approval, begging for scraps of affection, reshaping their entire existence for a woman's fleeting nod, only to be discarded when a better option appears. But what happens when a man truly wakes up? When he decides to rewrite the rules? This is where philosophy becomes power. There's a moment in every man's life when the world shifts, not a slow realization, but a single searing instant where everything he believed shatters. What pours out isn't enlightenment, it's fire. This is when you see clearly that every tear you shed, every sleepless night, every sacrifice you made for love was never about her. It was about your weakness, your hunger, your desperate need to be chosen. Diogenes knew this truth better than any man who ever lived. He didn't beg for love. He didn't barter for affection. He lived in a barrel, pleasured himself in public, and died owning nothing. In doing so, he became more powerful than kings. The greatest lie sold to men is that they need a woman's love to be whole. History is littered with the corpses of men who believed it. Samson, the strongest man alive, fell to a woman's betrayal. Orpheus walked into Hades for Eurydice only to lose her because he couldn't resist looking back. Even mighty Hercules burned himself alive when his lover Deianira poisoned him with what she thought was a love potion. These aren't love stories, they're warnings. Diogenes spat on such weakness. When a young man came to him sobbing over a lover who left him for another, Diogenes listened silently. Then, without a word, he picked up a dead rat by its tail and held it up. The man recoiled in disgust. "You shudder at a rotting corpse," Diogenes said. "Yet you let a woman rot your soul. This is the first law of ruthless self-mastery. Nothing, not love, not sex, not companionship, is worth your dignity. Most men never learn this. They chase women's approval like addicts chasing a drug that no longer works. They tell themselves, this time will be different. She's not like the others. If I prove enough, she'll stay. And they're wrong every time. But you have a choice. You can keep kneeling or you can stand. There's a story about Diogenes most philosophers won't tell you. One evening, as he ate his simple meal of lentils, a wealthy politician passed by and sneered, "If you'd just learned to flatter the king, you wouldn't have to live on scraps." Diogenes didn't even look up. "If you just learned to live on scraps," he replied, "you wouldn't have to flatter the king." This is the essence of killing neediness. Most men are slaves to desire. They need sex validation, the feeling of being needed, and in that need they hand women absolute power over them. A woman senses this need like a shark smells blood. She feels disgust even as she exploits it. Diogenes knew this better than anyone. When the most beautiful courtesan in Corinth offered herself to him, he refused. "If you offer rotten figs," he said, "would I take them just because they're free?" The courtesan, furious, demanded to know why he insulted her. Diogenes shrugged. "Because I don't need you. This is the second law. The moment you stop needing a woman is the moment she starts needing you. This isn't manipulation or a game, it's the simple, unshakable truth of power dynamics. A complete man cannot be controlled. So what does true freedom mean? It doesn't mean hating women or rejecting love. It means understanding that love isn't air, you won't die without it. Diogenes proved this every day of his life. He owned nothing, answered to no one, indulged himself when he pleased, ate when hungry, and slept wherever he liked. When Alexander the Great asked what he desired, Diogenes had one request. "Don't block my sunlight." That's an unchained man, not one who has everything, but one who needs nothing. Most men fail here. They hear these words, feel the fire, then slip back into old habits. They meet a woman who smiles brightly, and suddenly they're trapped again, bartering affection, trading dignity for attention. Don't be that man. Be the man who looks at love and says, "I'll enjoy you, but I won't need you." Be the man who walks away when respect is gone. Be the man who, when asked what he fears, answers honestly nothing. Diogenes died as he lived free. When asked how he wanted to be buried, he said, "Throw me to the wolves. I don't need a grave." Even in death, he refused chains. So ask yourself, standing at this crossroads, will you live as a beggar for love, or will you burn away neediness and become a man who cannot be tamed? The choice is yours. Type barrel in the comments below. It's not just a word, it's a declaration that you're done kneeling, that you've felt the fire and refuse to let it burn you again, that you choose freedom over want, power over pain, and unyielding truth over comforting lies. Tell me, who are you? The man still broken, or the man who rises barrel? Say it, own it, live it. The rest of your life begins now. One must imagine Diogenes content, as Jung might have said, living unshackled in a world of chains, finding freedom not in love's embrace, but in the fierce refusal to need it.